Let me remind you of a historical precedent. In the past, there was an international organization of communist parties, the Communist Internationale, Comintern, which united parties from different countries with the goal of establishing a global Soviet power. However, in 1943, the World Congress indirectly questioned the necessity of the International. The decision to dissolve it did not come out of nowhere and required Stalin's approval. Although history has shown that this decision was primarily Stalin's, which is a historical mistake. Now, imperialist Russia, as the heir to the Union of Soviets, is laying claim to global dominance with a national dictatorship where the CPSU has degenerated and supports the bourgeois regime of the Russian Federation and the war in Ukraine. The Russian regime is doing all this under the guise of its hereditary connection with the Union of Soviets and the fight against Western fascism, particularly in Ukraine. But the parties of all former socialist countries are following in this wake, and at best they have degenerated into bourgeois democracies. But the question is, are they really democracies? For example, as in the Czech Republic, total anti-communism versus so-called total communism. Therefore, I again emphasize the inadmissibility of stereotypical copying national ideas in our work under the guise of the Communist International Movement, including under the guise of Stalinist decisions and ideas, but not indiscriminately, as everyone knows, about the admission of the name Comintern. Stalinist? The question is why and for what purpose?
But the representatives of the left in communist parties are also rushing from one corner to another in the understanding that there was no socialism in the USSR. Frankly speaking, there was pure Trotskyism. Here we need to raise the topic of Trotskyism. It's crucial because it's real, and furthermore, Comrade Stalin isn't worthy of gratitude. On the other hand, they're trying to exploit him, that is, his victories. For example, the Russian regime claims that Comrade Stalin was a brilliant manager and the antithesis of Lenin. He created the Soviet Empire with his genius, and therefore his experience must be further applied in the construction of socialism in Russia, as understood with Chinese specifics. Critics of communist regimes know and understand perfectly well where and how to bite Marxists, and often point out that all attempts to build socialist societies lead to totalitarianism, political repression, and restrictions on human rights which contradict the original ideas of communism.